Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Nila Madhava Radha Nila Madhava Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Nila Madhava Radha Nila Madhava Shri Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra, Jaya Sudarshana. Jaya Sitaram, 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 Jaya Lakshmana Hanuman. Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha. Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Nitai Gaura Haribo, Haribolo, Haribo, Nitai Gaura Haribo. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Prajaka Acharya Ashtota Shata Shishi My Divine Grace Aparachana Rinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya PPT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Prajaka Acharya Ashtota Shata Shishi My Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Nama Acharya Srila Haridasa Thakur Ki Jai. Premise Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Ayodhya Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande. All glory to assembled devotees. All glory to assembled devotees. All glory to assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glory to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Prahladaladaine. Hiranyakashipurvakaha. Hiranyakashipurvakaha. Shilatankanakalaye. Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha. Narsimha Parato Narsimha. Yeto Yeto Yami Tato Narsimha. Mitato Narsimha. Bahir Narsimha Hrudaye Narsimha. Narsimha Hridaye Narsimha. Narsimha Madim Sharanam Prapate. Tava Kara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubrungam Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Tava Kara Kamalavare Naka Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubrungam Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Nita Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nita Gaura Hari Bol विघ्न विनाशक लक्ष्मी नरसिंह भगवान की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय।
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namaha Radha Krishna Siva Pabo E Abhilashi Krishna Siva Pabo E Abhilashi Yetomara Sharanaloy Taravancha Purnahoy Kripa Kori Korotare Vrindavanavasi Morai Abhilas Vilas Kunje Diovas Nayane Heribo Sada Yugala Rupa Rasi Heni Vedanadara Sakiranugata Koro Seva Adhikara Diye Koro Nijadasi Dina Krishna Dase Ko Eye Namorahoy Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadhayena Bhasi Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadhayena Basi. Yani kani cha papani brahmachari kani cha tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade. Yani kani cha papani brahmachari kani cha tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade. Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Vrinde, Jaya Vrinde, Jaya Vrinde, Jaya Tusi Maharani, Jaya Tusi Maharani, Jaya Tusi Maharani, Jaya Tusi Maharani. Nita Gora Haribo, 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 Nita Gora Haribo. Shri Vindayai Tulsi Devai Priyayai Keshavai Shacha Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Sacharatai Namo Namaha. Shri Vrindayai Tulsi Devai Priyayai Keshavai Shacha Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Sacharatai Namo Namaha. Shri Vindayai Tulsi Devai Priyayai Kesavai Shacha Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Sacharatai Namo Namaha. Shri Vindayai Tulsi Devi Maharani Ki Jai.
Behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Karho Danso the Virgin. Please give me the privileged devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always swim in the love Shri Radha and Govinda. Srimati Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. There are 10 fences in the matter of chanting holy names that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their life for the propagation of holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider named demigods like Lord Shiva or Brahma to be equal to independent named Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature pursuing the Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting holy name. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna one of the auspicious ritualistic activities, offering the Vedas as free activities, karma, kanda. 9. To instruct a faithless person about the glory of holy name. 10. To not complete faith in the chanting holy names, and to maintain material attachments in understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to achieve desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer most humble witnesses on all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just as I trees who can fulfill to everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam ki jai. Cheto Tarpana Marjanam Pavamaha Tavakni Nirvapanam Shriya Gairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavatu Jivanam Anandam Bodhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnarmita Sadhanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pita Niyamita Smaranena Kalaha Etadishi Tavarkripa Bhagavam Mamapi Durudavami Disham Yaha Janina Nurakaha Trinatapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtanya Sada Harihi Na Thanam Na Chanam Na Sundarin Kavitam Va Jagadisha Kamaye Mama Jammani Jammani Shware Bhavata Bhaktir Haituki Twai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Sthita Duri Satesham Vichintaya Nayanam Kalata Shurutaraya Vadanam Katkata Rudaya Kira Purakai Nichitam Mapurukata Tava Nama Grahane Bhavishati Yuga itam nimishena chakshusha pravisha itam shunya itam jagat sarvam govinda virahe name ashirishava padaratam pinnashtumam adarsanam marmhatam karotuva yatha tatha va vidathatu lampato mat prana nathastu seeva naparaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam ki jai. Glory to Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes fire of conditional life for repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction of humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases ocean transcendental bliss and enable us to free take the nectar for which always anxious. Oh my Lord, your holy name alone grant all benediction human beings, and thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendent names you have mastered our transcendent energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh my Lord, our kindness enables us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more taller than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Oh, Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. Oh, Sahamarjananda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow I fall into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the Adam the lotus feet. Oh, my Lord, while my eyes be decorated, tears of love flowing constantly when I chant the holy name. When will my voice choke up, or the hair of my body stand and a recitation of your name? Oh, Govinda, feeling of separation, I'm considered a moment to be like a great millennium. Tears are flowing from eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so. He handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken heart by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipable Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Shastra. Shri Mangala Charnam prayers ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshomritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Soyam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurung Vaishnavam Shcha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakham Vitam Shcha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatya Desha Tarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Daitaya Kripaptaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhuryo Chala Premadya Shri Rupa Nuka Bhaktita Shri Gaura Karana Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Mutaye Dinatarine Rupa Nuga Viruta Pasiddhanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gaura Kishoraya Sashad Vairagya Mutaye Vipralamba Rasam Bodhe Padam Bujayate Namaha Namo Bhaktivinodaya Sachidananda Namne Gaurate Shati Svarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Virbhava Bhumeswam Nirdishta Sajana Priya Vaishnava Sava Bhoma Shri Jaganathaya Te Namaha Vancha Kalpa Durubhishta Kripa Sindhu Bhevacha Patidanam Pavne Pyo Vaishnave Pyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahadanyaya Krishna Prema
Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guru Se Namaha Datvatbhakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surator Pangur Mama Manda Mater Gati Matsarvasva Padambujo Radha Madana Mohano Divya Vinduraya Kalpadumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastali Esevimanu Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasaram Divam Sevata Tatastita Karsan Venusvanir Gopir Gopinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Manustate Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakarana Sukapa Riksha Laksaritesa Surabhira Vipalyantam Lakshmi Sahasrasata Sambrahma Sevimanam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Vachami Venam Kranandam Arvinda Dalaytaksham Parhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandar Prakuti Kamaniyam Visesa Subham Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Vachami Alola Chandrika Lasatvanamanya Flamsira Nam Gadam Pranay Keli Kalavilasam Shyamam Tribangalalita Nita Prakasam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendri Riddimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadvijvala Vigrahasya Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Naviyovanam Cha Vede Sadurlabam Adurlabam Atmabhaktam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastukoti Satavasarasam Pragamya Vayor Kapi Manasomuni Pungamanam Sopyasti Ad Prapadasimya Vichintya Tadve Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sura Jaitam Jagananda Kutim Yaschakti Rasti Jagananda Jaya Yadanta Anantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyavana Jastataiva Samprapti Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Suktarya Meva Nikama Pratitastuvanti Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Pratibhavitabhis Tabirya Eva Nicharupataya Kalabi Goloka Eva Prasata Kilatma Bhuto Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pramanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksadeva Hidesa Vilokayanti Yam Sham Sundaram Achintya Guna Swarupam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menitistana Anavataram Akaroba Krishna Swayam Samavad Paramam Pamanyu Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami
Krishna Soyam Samabhava Paramapumam Yo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful, spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. Okay, go ahead.
I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, the first progenitor, who is tending the cows, yielding all desire, in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, who is adept in playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock's feather, with a figure of beauty tinged with the hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, round whose neck is swinging a garland of flowers, beautified with the moon locket, whose two hands are adorned with the flute and jeweled ornaments, who always revels in pastimes of love, whose graceful threefold bending of form of Shamasundara is eternally manifest. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, substantiality, and is thus full of the most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of the transcendental figure possesses in himself the full-fledged functions of all the organs, and eternally sees, maintains, and manifests the infinite universes, both spiritual and mundane. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas, but obtainable by pure unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, he is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning and the eternal Purusha. Yet he is a person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis who aspire after the transcendental and betake themselves to pranayama by drilling the respiration, or by the jnanis who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane, extending over thousands of millions of years. He is an undifferentiated entity, as there is no distinction between potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe, at one and at the same time. Such is the primeval Lord whom I adore. I adore the same Govinda, the primeval Lord, in whose praise men who are imbued with devotion sing the mantra suktas told by the Vedas, by gaining their appropriate beauty, greatness, thrones, conveyances, and ornaments. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, residing in his own realm, Goloka, with Radha resembling his own spiritual figure, the embodiment of the ecstatic potency, possessed of the 64 artistic activities, in the company of her confidants, Sakis, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasa. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shamasundara himself with Krishna himself with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eye of devotion tinged with salve of love. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Rama, Nrisimha, Vamana, etc., as his subjective portion.
Very good. Hare Krishna. Shrimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai. Shrimad Bhagavad Gita Grantaraj Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutali Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanami. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Vatara Devi Sesa Sunyavali Paskati Sutari. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're going to read chapter 15. Text number 17. Who wants to read? You want to read? All right, you want to get the microphone? Recite the verse first.
Uttama purushastvanya paramatmeti udarata yolokatrayamavishya bibarti avyaya ishvara. Translation. Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them.
So what are the besides these two? In the previous verse or previous verses, it says two types or two classes of living beings: the fallible and the infallible. Go ahead. So besides those two, there's the greatest living personality, the super soul or Paramatma. Go ahead.
The idea of this verse is very nicely expressed in the Katha Upanishad and Shweta Shvatara Upanishad.
Shweta
Shwetara Upanishad. It is clearly stated there that above the innumerable living entities, some of whom are conditioned and some of whom are liberated, there is the Supreme Personality who is Paramatma. The Upanishadic verse runs as follows: Nityo Nityanam Chetananam. The purport is that amongst all the living entities, both conditioned and liberated, there's one Supreme Living Personality, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who maintains them and gives them all the facility of enjoyment, according to different work. That Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. A wise man who can understand Him is eligible to attain perfect peace, not others.
So yesterday I received the homework of a very nice devotee. He's not initiated, but he's a very sincere person. And he did the homework for tomorrow. He interviewed a bunch of students and got their answers to a whole bunch of questions that we asked, like, do you believe that you went through already 8 million species of life to reach the human form of life, and things like that. And he got very interesting answers. Most of them were no, I don't know, maybe. So I hope you have done your homework. Have you done the homework? Yeah. Okay. You do the homework for tomorrow? Huh? Okay. I'm just reminding you, so you don't come in and say, "Oh, I forgot." Okay, go ahead, finish.
Maharaj, that's it for the purport.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yes, so this is a very important purport because this whole chapter is important because it's explaining even more detail that we got in the 13th chapter. Now it's giving even more detail about who is Krishna, who are the living entities, what are the different, let's say, positions or states of consciousness of living entities and so forth. This is all necessary knowledge. if you want to be Krishna conscious, and if you want to go back to Godhead. Especially when it says that Nityo Nityanam Chetanam Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidati Kamam. It's a very important verse, and says that the purport is that amongst all the living entities, both conditioned and liberated, there is this one supreme living personality, the supreme personality of Godhead, who maintains them and gives them all the facility of enjoyment according to different work. So, that's the difference between God and the living entities or jivas. All the jivas are being maintained by God, because He controls the sun, the moon, the tides, the currents, and the vegetables and fruits. He controls everything. So He is maintaining everyone else. No one else can say that they're maintaining everyone else. They can't even maintain. We can't even maintain ourselves. We need the help of Krishna in order to exist. So anyone who claims to be God, you can know that they are the most ignorant person in the world. And there's a lot of those most ignorant people in the world, especially in India. Therefore, it's necessary to read Bhagavad Gita to understand who we are and who Krishna is, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Without understanding this fundamental fact of life, we remain in ignorance and we remain in the cycle of birth and death. Is it hard to understand this? No, it's not hard. Then why don't people understand it? Because they're puffed up with false pride and they have many, many false ideas. So there's a very nice lecture that explains this in more depth. It's the 6th canto, 1st chapter, 39th verse. And Prabhupada gave the lecture on June 5th, 1976 in Los Angeles. And the verse says, what is the process of punishing others? Who are the actual candidates for punishment? Are all karmis engaged in fruitive activities punishable, or only some of them? So this is the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is talking about Yamaraj and the history where the devotee who was a devotee, and then he gave up and became a demon. And then, but he said the name of Narayana at the moment of death, calling his son, not Krishna, but because the name of Narayana is absolute, he got a second chance, and he was saved by the Yamadutas, by the Vishnu Dutas. And there was a big discussion between the Yamadutas and also their guru, Yamaraj. And so this is from that section of the Bhagavad Gita. And the verse says, Katam svidiyate danda kim vasya stanam ipsitam dandya kim karina sarve ahosvit katichin rinam. 6.1.39. And Prabhupada writes, so the challenge replied that you are representing Dharmaraj, or Yamaraj. He's also called Dharmaraj. So you have come here to take away this person, and we are prohibiting. So you have challenged us. So first of all, explain your position, whether you know what is Dharma and what is Adharma. Who is punishable? Under what circumstances one is punished? And one who is punished, where does he go? Actually, all these descriptions are there in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Different types of hellish life. What kind of sinful activities are punished? By what kind of hellish condition? Everything is there in the 5th canto. Everything is there. There are different planets where Yamaraja is there, how a dead man or the soul is taken there, the path, Everything is in detail there. If you say it is mythology, why? You should say mythology. You have not seen the whole universe. How is it situated? You are simply imagining from this place. So your imagination, imaginology, so Prabhupada made a word there, imaginology, and we have our mythology. So we have got some evidence, but you have no evidence. At least we have got some support of the books, meaning the Vedas. And what do you have? You are simply imagining. I think. I believe. What is this nonsense? What is your proof? Everyone is saying, I believe. Hundreds and thousands. And what is correct? At least we have got something correct. We don't say, I believe. This is not our process of knowledge. We, Krishna conscious person, we never say, I believe. No. We immediately quote from the Shastra. So you see, this is real Prabhupada. And anyone who claims that Prabhupada is giving his personal opinion in his books, that's completely false. It's a lie. That's a vicious lie. He is following what he's been teaching. That is, you have to back up every statement you make with Shastric evidence. And Prabhupada says, here is the statement, Shruti Pramanam. According to Vedic civilization, evidence is Shruti, Vedas. If you say something, and if you give evidence, proof from the Vedic literature, sense things, I believe, we believe, perhaps, maybe. No, such foolish things are not accepted. Okay, let's look up the Big Bang and see what kind of language they use to explain it. Look it up. There are thousands and millions of people. Everyone will imagine something and say something. Then where is the correct thing? This is not good. Veda pramanam, that will be described in the next verse. Veda pranhito dharmo. Veda pranhita. What is pramanam? That will be described in the next verse. Veda pranhito dharma. Veda pranhita to. What is explained in the Vedas, that is Dharma. You cannot manufacture Dharma. If it is mentioned in the Vedas, what is Dharma, what is Adharma, then it is acceptable. I have several times explained that you cannot make law in your comfortable home. No, law is made by the government, and you have to accept it. You cannot say that I believe this will be law. Who will care for your law? You may believe at your home, that will not be accepted. The law given by the government, keep to the right, that you must have. You cannot say, I believe left thing, or no, that is not. Similarly, dharmascha, it will be explained further. Okay, what do they say for the Big Bang? Anybody?
The term Big Bang was coined by Fred Hoyle in 1949 in a popular BBC science broadcast. It refers to what has become the current standard model.
The present standard model?
Yeah. That all matter and energy in the universe originated in an initial explosive event. In 1927, F.R. Georges Lemaitre published a paper that contained mathematical calculations proving that a galactic nebulae was moving away from us. The shocking conclusion was that the universe was expanding. This idea was contrary to the steady state model of the universe preferred by most astronomers and scientists, Albert Einstein and Fred Hoyle among them. In the steady state model, the universe was stable and infinite in time and space. Up until the discovery of the cosmic microwave background radiation in 1965, many astronomers still held to the steady state model. And then it says, by studying the spectra of 46 galaxies and the Doppler velocity of these galaxies relative to our own Milky Way galaxy, Hubble concluded that they were moving away from us. This famous redshift was provided evidence that the farther away galaxies are, the faster they move away from each other. Based on these observations, it became evident that the universe was expanding uniformly. Assuming that the universe expanded much like a balloon being blown up, the high velocities of galaxies could be explained with almost perfect mathematical accuracy. This is exactly what Lemaitre concluded in his paper. If space was stretching like an elastic of a balloon being blown up, then the farther a galaxy is from us, the greater its rotational velocity must be. And that's it, Maharaj.
That's it?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of.
Read a little bit more.
CMB radiation also provides evidence for an even distribution of matter in the universe. Star clusters and galaxies might at first glance contradict this idea, but on a large scale, it appears to be true.
It appears to be true. See, that's speculation right there.
In 2013, after completing a 4-year scan of the CMB radiation, data from the Planck Space Observatory confirmed this fact. More recent data indicates that matter in the universe might be 10% more.
Might be
10%
so
more.
now they're going to the speculation. Go ahead.
Yes. Might be 10% more uniformly distributed than previous models predicted. Again, this even distribution points to a single origin in time of all matter in the universe. In spite of this strong line of evidence, other theories have been proposed in order to
Other theories have been proposed. Speculation.
in order to depose the idea that there was a beginning to our universe. However, even many of these alternatives to the Big Bang would require the universe to have a beginning. This is important because if science indicates that the universe had a beginning, then that has philosophical implications related to the creation event. Internal universe theories raise the same type of questions.
Then that would be what?
Example, why is there something rather than nothing?
What?
Why is there something that rather than nothing?
Are you asking a question or is
No,
that?
they state this.
Yeah, okay.
But a beginning of something really begs the question, what was happening before?
They don't know. You see now you're waiting and now you got into the level of speculation. You see. So because they don't have any Vedas, they just have their experimentation and imperfect vision. And because we have 4 defects, we have imperfect senses, we make mistakes, we're easily illusioned, and we have a cheating propensity. There's no way that they can figure out the origin of the universe. They're always going to make mistakes, they're always going to see maybe, perhaps, and so forth. Okay. So Prabhupada says, at least we have our books, we have our Vedas. They don't have any Vedas. They just have their speculations. Okay. Well, I just wanted to give you an example of that. That's a very important verse. Very important purport. It goes on for many pages, but I don't want to go over that completely right now. Okay, so now we go to text 18. Somebody else want to read? Text 18. (15, 18). Yasmat sharam atito ham aksharad apichotama Atosmi loke vede cha pratitai purushottama.
Translation: because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person.
So that's a very important statement. He says, beyond the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, you have two classes of men, fallible and infallible. Krishna is beyond both of those. That means that he never makes any mistakes. Okay? But more than that, everything he says, everything he does is perfect. That's beyond the fallible and the infallible. Go ahead.
Purport: no one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, neither the conditioned soul nor the liberated soul. He is therefore the greatest of personalities. Now it is clear here that the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are individuals. The difference is that the living entities, either in the conditioned state or in the liberated state, cannot surpass in quantity the inconceivable potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is incorrect to think of the Supreme Lord and the living entities as being on the same level or equal in all respects.
That's what the Mayavadis are trying to establish. And it's complete nonsense. Go ahead.
There is always the question of superiority and inferiority between their personalities. The word Uttama is very significant. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Loke signifies in the Parusha Agama, the Smriti scriptures, as confirmed in the Nirukti dictionary, Lokete Vidyarte Nena. The purpose of the Vedas is explained by the Smriti scriptures.
Okay, so there's Shruti and Smriti. Shruti is what's spoken by Krishna, and Smriti is what is spoken about Krishna by pure devotees. Go ahead.
The Supreme Lord, in his localized aspect of Paramatma, is also described in the Vedas themselves. The following verse appears in the Vedas: Chandagona Upanishad 8.12.3. Tavad Esha Sam.
That's all right, you don't have to read it, just say the English.
The super soul coming out of the body enters the impersonal Brahm Jyotir. Then, in his form, he remains in his spiritual identity. That supreme is called the Supreme Personality. This means that the Supreme Personality is exhibiting and diffusing his spiritual effulgence, which is the ultimate illumination. That Supreme Personality also has a localized aspect as Paramatma. By incarnating himself as the son of Satyavati and Parashara, he explains the Vedic knowledge as Vyasa.
There's no need of Paramatma in the spiritual world because Krishna is there and is everywhere there. In his expansion, this was Narayana, and in his personal expansion. So Paramatma assumes, where it says here, he remains in a spiritual identity. That supreme is called Supreme Personality. This means that the Supreme Personality is exhibiting and diffusing his spiritual effulgence, which is the ultimate illumination. That Supreme Personality also has a localized aspect as Paramatma. By incarnating himself as the son of Satyavati and Parasara, he explains the Vedic knowledge as Vyasadeva. So these are all the transcendental expansions of the Lord, and it's to help us understand that in every situation of life, the most important, let's say, reality is the presence of Krishna. You do not have to do any research. Like the scientists, they only discovered in 1928 or 27 that the universe is continually expanding. These things are explained in the Vedas. You don't even have to do that experimentation. And because everything in the material world and the spiritual is dynamic, it's not static. And when we read the Vedic Shruti, the knowledge given by Krishna himself, or the Smriti, the knowledge given by the devotees, all these things are explained. Just like this verse, it says, Yasmat Sharam Atitoham. Because I am transcendental beyond both the fallible and infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person. So, what's being established in this verse? No one is equal to or greater than Krishna. Everyone is subordinate to Krishna. That's one point. Now there's other points too that are made by these simple statements. But to understand that, you have to carefully read the purport, where Prabhupada explains this. So, there are many different levels of realization in every word, in every syllable of Sanskrit. And most people miss most of those let's say, conclusions because of not being experienced in how to read Shastra, or not being ready to understand because it takes time to become purified. The more you become purified, the more you begin to see the different levels of realization of these verses. And then you suddenly are shocked at how much information is in a simple verse and in each word. So the words here that are interesting is Akshara. Now, Akshara is a name they give to kids in India, right? We have an Akshara, right? So, what? So, what does that word mean? Beyond the infallible. What is beyond the infallible? Infallible already means what is always true. Well, there's a higher level of truth. That is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here we have a word, this Akshara. It's a very profound word, and it has a huge meaning. So you could write a whole book on the word Akshara. And it's used today as, especially in South India, as a name of a girl. And you can see how the Vedic knowledge was an integral part of the culture, especially South India. So, but people just use the name and they don't really understand what the word means, the deep meaning of this Akshara, beyond the infallible, beyond the fallible and the infallible. But what does it mean beyond the infallible, beyond what is already perfect? Is the highest perfection, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the primary quality of everything. So whatever you see a brick, you see a building, you see a living entity. Krishna is the primary quality of all of those things. That's the vision of a devotee. That's called universal vision of the Lord. Without that either theoretical or practical realization of the universal presence of the Lord, we remain an atheist. And we will be in situations where we manifest our atheistic, let's say, weaknesses. But when we have this universal vision of the Lord, we cannot be an atheist anymore, because we're seeing Krishna as the primary quality of everything. This takes time. It's not something that happens overnight, and it's based on regular hearing and discussing. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Are there any questions?
So, Hare Krishna Maharaj. So, in this purport, I think, can you little bit explain? So, here it says, the supreme is the supreme personality at the end of this purport. The supreme personality is exhibiting and diffusing his spiritual effulgence, which is the ultimate vision, and then
Which is what?
which is the ultimate illumination.
Yeah, the Brahma
And-
Jyoti.
Yeah, and that supreme personality also has a localized aspect. But before that, he's saying that he's referring to the spiritual identity, right? The super soul coming out of the body enters the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. Then, in his form, he remains in his spiritual identity. Is that like? That's why I mean the Paramatma leaves the body of the human being or anybody like a jiva and
Well,
goes.
look, it says, Vadanti tat tattvavitas tattvam yajganam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Krishna is understood in three levels, as Brahma Jyoti, as Paramatma, and as Bhagavan. So, basically that's what it's saying there. Read it again.
Yeah, the super soul coming out of the body enters the impersonal Brahma Jyoti.
Okay, so that's the first understanding of Krishna as Brahma Jyoti. Go ahead.
Then, in his form, he remains in his spiritual identity. That supreme is called the supreme personality.
Right, so he is both the Brahma Jyoti, the Paramatma, and Krishna Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Three levels of understanding. That's what it's saying. Now, that's why Krishna is the primary quality of everything. Whether it's Paramatma or it's the Brahma Jyoti, right? So he's existent in all those things as the primary quality, in the spiritual world as well as in the material world. So, if we understand this verse, first canto, second chapter, Vedante tattvavitas tattvam yajganam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Look it up. I think it's 1, 2, like 10 or 11. Somewhere there. Vedante tattvam yajganam advayam. You see it? 2.11. 1 to 11. Okay. Okay, let's read the verse and then the purport.
Vadanti tattva vidat swatvam yajnana madvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma or Bhagwan. Shall I read the purport?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. The absolute truth is...
See, Krishna is at the same time Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan.
Bhagwan.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The absolute truth is both subject and object.
See, the absolute truth is both subject and object. So that means he's the primary quality of everything. Go ahead.
And there is no qualitative difference there. Therefore, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan are qualitatively one and the same.
See? Go ahead.
The same substance is realized as impersonal Brahman by the students of the Upanishads, as localized Paramatma by the Hiranyagarbhas or the yogis, and as Bhagavan by the devotees. In other words, Bhagwan or the personality of Godhead is the last word of the absolute truth.
In other words, if you understand Krishna, you understand everything else. If you don't understand Krishna, you won't understand everything else. So the scientists don't understand Krishna. Therefore, they're, using words like maybe, perhaps. There are many theories. We're still not sure like that. And it'll always be like that. They will never come with definite, let's say, irrefutable knowledge. They can't, because they're just basing everything on theories and guesses and some experimentation with their imperfect senses. So it's a waste of time learning what the scientists say. It just misleads people. Go ahead.
So, is this the reason Maharaj, that's why this impersonalist says that, okay, we merge into Brahma Jyoti, because this verse, like just now what we read, that he goes into, because they don't have concept of Atma and Paramatma as two separate identities.
They think that they become Paramatma.
Okay.
Jivatma becomes Paramatma. So that's a complete lie. And that's what this verse is. Yasmat saram atitoham aksharad apichotama. So this akshara, Krishna is beyond the infallible. Beyond that. And he's uttama. He's ut, above tama, ignorance. The scientists can't say that. They're still in ignorance. They're making theories, and they're changing their theories all the time. Go ahead, keep reading.
Okay, Paramatma is the partial representation. Sorry.
Go ahead.
In other words, Bhagwan or the personality of Godhead is the last word of absolute truth. Paramatma is the partial representation of the personality of Godhead, and impersonal Brahman is the glowing effulgence of the personality of Godhead, as the sun rays are to the sun god. Less intelligent students of either of the above schools sometimes argue in favor of their own respective realization. But those who are perfect seers of the absolute truth know well that the above three features of the one absolute truth are different perspective views seen from different angles of the vision.
There you go. That's the point.
As it is explained in the first shloka of the first chapter of the Bhagavatam, the supreme truth is self-sufficient, cognizant, and free from the illusion of relativity. In the relative world, the knower is different from the known, but in the absolute truth, both the knower and the known are one and the same thing.
There's another difference between the material world and the spiritual world.
In the relative world, the knower is the living spirit or superior energy, whereas the known is inert matter or inferior energy.
Is what?
Inert matter.
Inert matter. Okay.
Or inferior energy. Therefore, there is a duality of inferior and superior energy, whereas in the absolute realm, both the knower and the known are of the same superior energy.
It's another difference between the material and spiritual world. Go ahead.
There are three kinds of energies of the supreme energetic. There is no difference between the energy and energetic, but there is a difference of quality of energies. The absolute realm and the living entities are of the same superior energy, but the material world is inferior energy. The living being in contact with the inferior energy is illusioned, thinking he belongs to the inferior energy. Therefore, there is the sense of relativity in the material world. In the absolute, there is no such sense of difference between the knower and the known, and therefore everything there is absolute. So does that mean that he's talking about the spiritual world, there is no difference between the knower and the known, and everything there is absolute?
Yes. But in the material world, see, what you read about the Big Bang, there's a difference between the knower and the known. It's just by the way they're explaining things. Why? Because they don't know Krishna, so they have to make these explanations where there's a difference between the knower and the known. The knower is the person, like, do they know for sure what is the Big Bang? No, they don't. They're talking about it. They're talking about the expansion of the universe, things like that. But that's not actually explaining how this Big Bang took place and how it actually is the source of creation. You see? So these are things we have to realize, and you realize it gradually by reading the Shastra. So we're seeing there are many differences between the material world and the spiritual world. In fact, your next homework will be that, to go over all these different things that we're reading in this chapter and make a list of what we can validate from our own reading are differences between the material world and the spiritual world. And there are many differences. Okay, we'll stop right there. Okay.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. One basic doubt I am getting after reading this sloka. Maharaj, in Bhagavad
Talking
Gita
about first
in
canto, second chapter, verse number 11? That verse or the verse today?
today Bhagavad Gita
15:18.
15:18. I was trying to connect Bhagavad Gita 16. Krishna says there are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. But in Bhagavad Gita 18, Krishna says, because I am transcendental beyond both the fallible and infallible, and because I am the greatest. Where I am getting doubt now, why we say we need to think for always go to spiritual world, but by reading 18 now, Krishna says I am beyond the spiritual world.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that question. Because he's beyond infallibility. Infallibility means you never make a mistake. But that means that he's the supreme truth in every situation. There's nothing equal to him. There's nothing greater than him. So, one argument that the atheists have to try and confuse and defeat the people that believe in God is to say, you claim that everything has an origin. So, if you say that Krishna is the origin of everything, we can ask you, but what is the origin of Krishna? To stop that, what's called the infinite regress, look that up, infinite regress. To stop that infinite regress and that false argumentation of the Mayavadis and atheists, is the idea that Krishna is beyond the fallible and infallible. He is the supreme absolute truth. There's nothing beyond him. So what does it say? Infinite regress.
An infinite regress is an infinite series of entities governed by a recursive principle that determines how each entity in the series depends on or is produced by its predecessor.
By its predecessor.
In the epistemic regress, for example, a belief is justified because it is based on another belief that is justified.
In other words, the infinite regress means there are infinite things that one thing depends on another thing. And it's unending. But when Krishna says that he is beyond the infallible, that means he is the ultimate source of everything. There's nothing beyond him. So to defeat the idea of the atheists of the infinite regress, you have the fact that Krishna is beyond the infallible. There's nothing beyond him. He is the ultimate truth in every situation. So the atheists will argue with the infinite regress to defeat the argument that God is the ultimate source of everything and there's nothing beyond him. But the infinite regress, it's one thing depends on another thing, and it's an infinite thing. You can't come to the original source of anything. There's always going to be something else that's the source. Okay. Whereas what's being said that when Krishna is beyond the infallible, that means there's nothing beyond him. He is the ultimate truth. So later on, when you get into college, you'll come in contact with the term infinite regress. It's not. They don't teach anything like that in high school. It's when you get to the high level of speculation, of philosophical speculation, that you end up with this infinite regress concept. And it's usually used by people who are members of Mensa. Look up Mensa. Every day you learn something new. Mensa are the people in the world, it's an organization, they have the highest IQ intelligence, so-called. Actually, they're the dumbest, but what's it say?
It says, "Welcome to Mensa, the High IQ Society."
Say high IQ. The High Ignorance Society. Yeah, one time I gave a lecture to a whole group of Mensa members in Berkeley, California. They lived up on the highlands of Berkeley. They were all like PhDs and scientists. And they're the worst. They're the worst atheists. Okay, so there's things like Mensa. Now, the Mensa people, they all use the argument of the infinite regress to defeat you. So you have to understand these things if you want to be a preacher. Okay, so any other questions? Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.